For this project, I created a professional development workshop designed to help teachers learn more about differentiated instruction. The workshop is divided into two parts. In the first part, participants do guided research about differentiated instruction. The research process is differentiated in various ways. In the second part, I present further information about differentiated instruction, explain how I used differentiation in the first part of the workshop, and discuss how these techniques could be translated to the classroom. At the beginning of the workshop, participants will be asked to answer this question based on their existing knowledge. Participants will then be asked to choose one of these questions to research. I'll also provide resources to help them get started. After about 15 minutes spent researching, I'll ask everyone to choose how they want to share their learning. Participants will be grouped into triads to share, rather than trying to have everyone share in front of the whole group. They'll have about 10 minutes to prepare the product, and then we'll spend about 15 minutes sharing in triads. The rest of the workshop will consist of a presentation by me on differentiated instruction, explaining how I used differentiation in the first part. We'll start by talking about pre-assessment, which is important because it lets you know where everyone is in terms of existing knowledge and readiness for learning, so that you can meet students where they are. It can also serve as a hook to get students engaged before starting the unit of study. In this workshop, I used the opening question of what is differentiated instruction as a pre-assessment to let me know what existing knowledge everyone had of DI. One way to differentiate instruction is based on student interest. In this workshop, I do that by letting everyone choose the questions they want to answer and to choose their groups. This lets them choose a question that interests them and work with others who are interested in the same thing. I also made sure to have questions that varied in complexity, so learners could consider their existing knowledge and select a question that fits them. This is one way to differentiate by student readiness. In using this type of lesson with a class, you could also assign questions based on pre-assessment results, allowing you to further differentiate by student readiness. Another way to differentiate instruction is to differentiate the content students learn based on their readiness. In this workshop, I provided everyone the same resources to start with, so that everyone got the same scaffolding. But you could also differentiate the resources you provided so that students who are ready for higher level content work with more complex resources. Using a product menu allows you to differentiate product based on student learning profile, as students can show their learning in the way that's most comfortable for them. This is a good way to address multiple intelligences as well, by providing options that speak to as many of the intelligences as possible. The key is to know what you want students to show they understand or can do. In other words, what learning is being assessed. In this case, I wanted to know if groups found an answer to their question. How that answer is communicated could be flexible. Sometimes presentations will need to be seen by you as the teacher, but consider whether you can have students present to each other in groups. This saves time and prevents the presentations from getting tedious. Students could also score each other if the purpose is sharing knowledge more than assessment. You could also consider taping presentations so you could view them later to assess and score. For this workshop, product choices are limited due to time and technology constraints, but if those limitations don't apply, there are lots of options. Another thing you can do is give students parameters and invite them to propose their own product ideas. This gives them a sense of ownership and accountability over their product. We'll end the workshop by talking a little bit about assessment. Formative assessment, or assessment for learning, is crucial for differentiated instruction. This is assessment that you conduct to inform instruction. Formative assessments let you know what students have learned, what they're still struggling with, and what next steps they're ready for. Effective formative assessment provides the information you need to differentiate based on learner readiness. Summative assessment is assessment of learning. This occurs after learning and lets you know what students have learned and understood from a unit. An example would be a final exam. The products produced during this workshop could serve as either type of assessment. If we were continuing to study DI, they'd let me know what everyone had learned so far and guide me on where to go next. If we were done studying DI, these products would let me see what everyone had learned in the lesson. The final activity of the workshop is a brief summative assessment that takes the form of an exit ticket. Participants will be invited to answer these questions. These responses will help me in planning and revising the workshop for the future. And here you can see some of the references that I used in planning this workshop and a few more references.